Welcome to Echoverse Audio, your gateway to incredible sci-fi adventures. If you love stories that spark your imagination and take you beyond the stars, don't forget to subscribe and share our channel. Join us as we explore new worlds, unravel mysteries, and journey through the endless echoes of the universe. Let's dive into today's tale. Echoes of the Architects, the cosmic experiment of humanity. Elias Wren had the same dream again. He stood on the edge of a great obsidian plateau, its glassy surface stretching endlessly beneath a sky not of stars, but of glowing veins of light, white and blue filaments pulsing across the firmament like a living nervous system. The air was thick with a hum that didn't reach the ears but seemed to resonate directly with his bones. In the distance, rising above the horizon of this alien world, loomed a spire of translucent metal, spiraling into the sky like the vertebrae of a titan. It called to him, it always did, and just before he could reach it, just as the ground began to shimmer beneath his feet, he would awaken, breathless, his pulse racing as though he'd run for miles. Elias sat up in bed, covered in sweat despite the crisp chill of the environmental regulators humming softly in the corner of his apartment. The lights of New Stockholm flickered faintly through the window towers of steel and glass, casting long shadows across the Megacity sleeping streets. In the distance, the orbital ring glowed faintly like a halo, circling Earth's upper atmosphere, a constant reminder of humanity's technological triumphs. He had stopped talking about the dreams years ago. Psych evils were strict at the Institute, and the last thing he needed was a red flag on his neural stability report. But the dreams were getting stronger, more vivid, and most disturbingly, he was beginning to remember things he'd never learned: languages with no alphabet, machines without interfaces, patterns in mathematics that shouldn't make sense but did. The cum unit on his wrist vibrated, a soft pulse, not a call, a ping from the internal AI assistant. He glanced at the glowing display. Lab anomaly detected. Subject Delta has initiated autonomous neural reconstruction. Immediate analysis required. He was out of bed and dressed in under 5 minutes, his mind already shifting into work mode. The Neural Genesis lab was only a short maglev ride away. But as he stared out at the city flashing past the curved window of the train, a gnawing unease settled in his gut. Subject Delta was part of a controlled neural mapping program designed to help restore damaged cognitive tissue. Nothing advanced, nothing radical. But the phrase autonomous reconstruction should have been impossible. When he arrived, the lab was bathed in sterile blue light. Technicians moved silently behind sealed glass partitions, and the center table where Subject Delta was contained was alive with data streams and hovering interfaces. Elias stepped into the secure zone, nodded at the night shift technician, and began pulling up the logs. No external interference, no programming glitches, no viral anomalies. And yet, the subject, a patient who had been in a non-responsive state for nearly 6 months, was showing signs of complex neural regrowth. More than that, the patterns forming in the cortical simulations were not random. They were structured, familiar. He stared at the waveform overlays, his brow furrowing as a cold sweat broke across the back of his neck. The designs were the same shapes he'd seen in his dreams: spirals, interlocking helixes, lattice of thought that mimicked the architecture of that impossible spire. He cross-referenced with every known neural map in the database. Nothing matched, nothing human at least. The room dimmed slightly, a soft sound behind him. He turned, expecting the technician. Instead, he found himself staring at the blackened glass of the observation chamber. His own reflection blinked back at him. But for a fraction of a second, he saw something else: an overlay behind his eyes. A second face, taller, sharper, and those same glowing lines pulsing faintly across its skull. He staggered back, blinking rapidly. Nothing there, nothing rational, just his mind playing tricks on him. Elias, he turned to see Mira Elin, her dark hair pulled back in a loose braid, eyes tired but alert. She'd arrived earlier than scheduled. I thought you were still on Mars. I caught a priority shuttle. You told me to contact you if the Mars site had anything new. And she handed him a small crystalline drive. We found a panel in the lower ruins. It was buried under 3 meters of mineral sediment, no access points. But when we scanned it, it broadcasted a low-frequency signal identical to a pattern I know you've seen before. He took the drive, plugged it into the terminal, and watched as the holographic projection lit up above them. A rotating symbol filled the air, spirals within spirals, a fractal that seemed to shift infinitely inward. He didn't breathe, he couldn't. The exact same pattern had just formed inside Subject Delta's regrown neural matrix. "This isn't human," he whispered. "No," Mira agreed. "And the site's carbon dating suggests it's at least 2 million years old." Elias stared at the glowing spiral. The dream was no longer just a dream. It was a memory, or a message. And something or someone was waking up. The world didn't shift overnight, but for Elias Wren, it had already changed irrevocably. He spent the rest of the night buried in data, cross-referencing every trace of the signal Mira brought back from Mars, with the neural activity recorded in Delta. At first it felt like searching for constellations in a foreign sky, patterns without logic, without orientation. But slowly, pieces began to fall into place. The spirals were not just artistic or decorative, they were functional, instructional, a kind of layered syntax hidden within geometry, a language of creation. At 4:13 a.m., the Institute's internal network flagged his console. Access denied. Clearance revoked. He stared at the screen, then quietly, he reached for his portable console and transferred a mirrored copy of the subject data onto a hidden partition. Within minutes, his credentials were completely locked out. Nexus Prime had taken over. He didn't panic, that would come later. Now, the only thing that mattered was figuring out why a dormant mind had spontaneously begun rebuilding itself, using an ancient alien pattern, and why a Mars excavation, light years removed from that patient, had transmitted the exact same signal. When he left the lab, security personnel in dark uniforms were already marching toward the entrance. He kept his head down, heart pounding in his ears, and merged into the early morning crowd of biotech workers returning from shift. No one looked twice. Myra was waiting in his apartment, standing beside the window, arms crossed, a distant look in her eyes. "They've locked down my access, too," she said without turning. "Everything from the excavation, even my research logs, gone." "That was fast," Elias muttered. "Nexus doesn't waste time." He dropped into the chair opposite her, shoulders sagging. "They know. They've known," she said flatly. "They've probably known longer than us. We just triggered something." He opened the encrypted partition on his wrist console, projected the latest overlay into the air between them. It hovered, glowing faintly, the spiral fractal again, but this time, it pulsed in sync with Subject Delta's latest brainwave activity. "It's communicating," Elias said. "It's not just a design, it's adaptive. The patient's brain is literally responding to the signal. Like an antenna," Myra whispered. "Or a key." The silence between them was heavy. For the first time since the discovery, the implications were beginning to unfold fully. "If this is what we think it is," she continued slowly, "then this entire species, our entire history, it might not be what we've been told, or what we believed." Mira turned away from the window. "We need to leave the city. Nexus will scrub everything. Records people, you've seen it." "I'm not just going to run. We don't have a choice." Elias hesitated. "I need one more thing before we go. There's a guy, retired systems architect, used to work for the Memory Core project under Nexus before it got folded into the ThoughtForge initiative." Mira frowned. "I thought that program was shut down." "Officially, unofficially, they've been harvesting memory patterns from deceased minds for over a decade, mapping thought structures, trying to understand where consciousness comes from." "Let me guess," she said. "They found something they couldn't explain. They buried the project when the patterns stopped matching human neurobiology." "My contact, Thorne, said it was the closest thing he's ever seen to non-human cognition, and that was years ago." Mira nodded slowly. "Then we need to find Thorne, _." They met in a nameless diner beneath one of New Stockholm's older transit hubs. The place smelled of oil, synth protein, and neon. Thorne looked like a man who hadn't slept since the last century. His skin was thin, eyes sunken but sharp. He didn't speak until the waitress had walked away. "You two don't exist anymore," he said without preamble. "That fast?" Elias asked. "Faster," Thorne replied. "Nexus flagged your name with a zero-tier suppression. Your faces won't trigger cameras anymore. They'll just vanish." Mira exchanged a glance with Elias. "How?" Thorn gave a tired smile. Because you saw something you weren't supposed to. And now, it's trying to see you back. He pulled a chipped ditastic from his coat and slid it across the table. This is from the ThoughtForge archives. I kept a personal copy before I disappeared. I think you'll find the structure very familiar. Elias accessed the files. A 3D projection shimmered above the table. At first glance, it looked like an organic tree of neurons, but as it rotated, Myra's breath caught. It was the spiral, again and again, embedded in every layer of the neural structure. This is from the mind of a woman who died 3 years ago, Thorn said. She had no prior record of illness, delusion, or cognitive disorder. But this structure was growing inside her like a second consciousness. You think it's the same as what we found? Elias asked. Thorn nodded. The signal, the geometry, it's identical, and you're not the first to find it. Just the first they weren't able to silence in time. Then what is it? Mira asked. A parasite. No. Thorn leaned in, voice dropping. It's a design. We're not evolving, we're unfolding. Like blueprints. Blueprints for what? For a mind that isn't ours, he said. One that was placed inside us a long, long time ago. Elias sat back, trying to breathe. The weight of it was pressing down on him. A second consciousness. A hidden program. Awakening. So why now? He asked. Thorn looked out at the glowing skyline through the diner's smeared windows. Because, he said, the experiment is reaching its final stage. Thorn left them with a warning. If they wanted answers, they had to go off-grid. No more net access, no more city networks. Anything that could be traced would lead them back to Nexus or worse. By the time they boarded a private cargo skimmer headed toward the Scandinavian hinterlands, the sky was bleeding with morning light. Mira sat in the back of the vessel, her eyes flicking through a cracked portable holopad containing the ruined data from Mars. Elias sat beside her, absently running his fingers over the engraved spiral on the data crystal Thorn had given them. I keep thinking, Myra murmured, if this design was seated in us, if this is a part of what we are, then how many generations have carried it unknowingly? Elias stared out the window, watching forests blur past. All of them, he said softly. Every human who ever lived. Maybe even those before we called ourselves human. The thought settled like ice between them. When the skimmer finally landed on the edge of an abandoned geothermic station, cold, overgrown, forgotten Mira pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders. They hauled their gear into the old compound's subterranean vault. The power cells still worked, humming faintly when Elias reconnected them to a central core. It wasn't much, but it was far enough from the cities to buy time. They spent 2 days there, piecing together everything. The neural anomalies in Subek Delta, the fractal signal from the Martian ruins, Thorn's hidden data. The deeper they dug, the more the pieces fell into place and, the more they began to see the outline of something vast, ancient, and terrifying. The fractal language they had believed to be decorative or symbolic was neither. It was code, living recursive code. Not digital, biological, not programmed, engineered. The breakthrough came on the 3rd night. Elias, unable to sleep, began running a comparative analysis between early hominid DNA and the patterns in the alien signal. He expected noise-random overlaps. What he found instead was horrifyingly elegant. Embedded deep in the genome hidden within so-called junk DNA was a near-identical sequence to the Martian spiral. Not just similar, perfectly aligned. His heart froze. He ran the sequence again and again. This isn't coincidence, he whispered. Mira stirred from her cot, blinking groggily. What? It's in our DNA, Elias said, not looking away from the screen. The code. It's been with us since the beginning. Since before Homo sapiens, maybe before primates. She moved beside him, eyes scanning the results. That's not possible. Nothing about this is possible, Elias said, voice shaking, but it's real. We weren't just created, we were written. They sat in silence, staring at the simulation, rendering a twisting, spiraling chain of genetic sequences, glowing faintly in the shape of the alien spire from Ilias's dream. And then the signal came. It began as a soft tone through the speaker, barely audible. Then the walls of the compound seemed to shimmer, as if something beyond sound were vibrating in the air around them. The lights dimmed. Elias's console flared bright. Strings of symbols scrolled across the screen, pulsing with a rhythm too complex to be random. "What the hell is that?" Mira whispered. Elias didn't answer. He recognized the pattern. It was identical to the one forming inside Subject Alta's brain, just before the Institute locked him out. And in that moment, he understood. The code wasn't just meant to awaken minds. It was meant to summon something, or someone. A wave of vertigo hit him like a truck. He staggered backward, gripping the edge of the console. Mira reached for him, but he raised a hand. "It's speaking." His voice was distant, like it didn't quite belong to him. He looked up, and for a moment, Mira saw his pupils expand unnaturally, glowing faintly with blue light. He whispered words she didn't understand, syllables that vibrated in her chest like thunder trapped behind glass. Then it stopped. The console shut down. The signal cut off, and Elias collapsed. He awoke hours later, the emergency lights flickering. Myra knelt beside him, pale and shaken. "Elias, can you hear me?" He blinked slowly. "I saw it," he rasped. "The beginning of what? Our kind. We were made built piece by piece. Watched for thousands of years, not just by one species, but by many." Mira felt her blood run cold. "What do you mean, many?" There was a war, a conflict between civilizations, not just of planets but of ideologies. He sat up, shaking. One side believed in free will, evolution through chaos. The other perfection through design, biological programming, templates. "And us?" Mira asked. "We were the compromise," he said. "An experiment, something both sides could observe. A seed, left alone to grow, until the signal came." She stared at him, trembling, and now, he turned his head slowly. His eyes were still faintly glowing. "Now, they're coming back to see what we've become." The following days passed in a haze of deciphering and paranoia. The signal hadn't returned, not audibly, not visibly, but its presence lingered in the air like ozone after a storm. The structure around them seemed different, as if subtly reconfigured. The walls no longer echoed the same way. Devices powered without visible connections. Elias, though physically recovered, was changing. He didn't need sleep. He barely needed food. And when he spoke, there was a cadence in his voice that hadn't been there before. Not alien, just older. Like he was remembering someone else's memories, layered beneath his own. Myra noticed first when he began sketching spirals unconsciously into the dust on the floor. Spirals that turned into maps, into neural pathways, into schematics for machines that had never existed on Earth. He was becoming something else, or maybe just uncovering what he had always been. "I think the code rewrote part of me," Elias said one evening, as the wind howled outside the geothermal station. Myra stared at him, arms crossed. "Are you still you?" "I think so," he answered slowly. "But I'm also more. I remember things now, not clearly, but impressions. A world covered in oceans of liquid data, beings that communicated through light, a city carved into the rings of a gas giant." Mira looked away, trying to process. "If the experiment is waking up, Piff, you are waking up then. What does that make the rest of us?" "I don't know," Elias said, "but I think we're all capable of this. I was just the first to be triggered. The others will follow." A long silence stretched between them. Then Mira asked, "You said there were two sides. One that believed in order through design. The other, evolution through chaos. Which side made us?" Elias looked at her, something ancient flickering in his eyes. "Both," he said. "We were the final compromise." She turned away, pacing. "So we're not a species, we're a test. A battleground wrapped in skin." A soft chime echoed through the station. One of the old long-range communication terminals had reactivated. Something that should have been impossible without direct satellite access. Elias moved toward the console. The screen flickered, dimmed, then displayed a single word: awakening. Mira's voice was tight. "Is that from Nexus?" "No," Elias whispered. "It's from Offworld." The coordinates that followed were deep within the Arctic Circle. An area classified for decades under the Nexus Black Zone, a place no one was allowed to enter. No records, no maps. Only rumors of an ancient structure buried beneath the ice, long before human civilization ever emerged. They both knew they had to go. The journey north was brutal. To avoid Nexus surveillance, they traveled by ground off-grid, using black market vehicles and the help of an underground movement Elias didn't even know existed until Mira called in a favor from an old contact. They were known as the Fractal Salus Alliance of rogue scientists, exoanthropologists, and banned synthetic biology engineers. When they finally reached the edge of the Arctic Shield, they stood before a steel gate, half buried in ice, unmarked, dead to any known frequency, until Elias touched it. Without warning, the door sighed open, ancient mechanisms groaning beneath the permafrost. The ice cracked, split, and retreated as though responding to something in his DNA. Inside was a corridor unlike anything they had ever seen. Smooth black material pulsing faintly, lit from within. No seams, no joints, just endless curving tunnels, spiraling downward like a nautilus shell. They walked in silence for what felt like hours. At the center, they found it. A chamber the size of a cathedral, carved not by tools but by design. And in its heart, hovering in a beam of invisible light, was a sphere. Not metal, not glass, something in between. And inside it swirled fragments of memory, like a storm trapped in crystal. "It's not a weapon," Elias whispered. Myra stared at the sphere, her voice almost reverent. "Then what is it?" "A seed," he said, "of the first mind. The original pattern. The thing from which we were all copied." He stepped forward. Elias, he didn't stop. When he touched the sphere, there was no sound, no light, just silence and the sudden crushing weight of infinite awareness. He saw the beginning, not of the universe, but of intention. A moment when a civilization beyond stars realized that evolution was not fast enough, so they crafted it, cultivated it, spliced it across galaxies, left it in oceans, in dust, in DNA. They didn't just make humanity, they made many. We were just one experiment among thousands, and something had gone wrong. In his mind, Elias felt a presence turn toward him, massive, cold, ancient. "You are the threshold," he gasped, staggering back. Mira caught him. "What did you see?" "They're coming," he said. "Not to destroy, to harvest." Mira's voice trembled. "Harvest what?" "Our minds, our memories, everything we've built, felt, created. It was never ours. They planted it," she whispered. Elias nodded. "And now they've come to collect." Mira's breath steamed in the cold chamber, but her skin felt fever hot. Her heart pounded as the implications unfolded in her mind, generation after generation of humanity rising, warring, loving, dying. All part of a long arc written not by fate, not by nature, but by design. She stepped toward Elias, who had collapsed to one knee, still clutching his head. "Can you hear me?" she asked. His eyes flicked up to her, still human, still Elias. But something deeper shimmered behind them now, like a reflection on deep water. "Yes," he rasped, "but not just you." He turned toward the sphere, which pulsed now with a soft rhythmic hum as if breathing, waiting. Mira didn't need to ask what it wanted. She could feel it too. It wasn't just a device. It was alive, or had once been. And now it was awake again, because of Elias. Because of them. A vibration trembled up from the floor, subtle but growing, like the heartbeat of something buried beneath the earth. A moment later, the chamber lights shifted, no longer cold and clinical, but warm and golden, as if dawn were rising inside the ice. And then it spoke, not aloud, but in their minds. "The cycle nears completion. The harvest begins. The divergent node has emerged." Mira staggered back. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Elias's voice was distant, hollow. "I'm the node." "What?" "They built redundancy into the experiment. Triggers, contingencies, failsafes. Most iterations follow the same path: birth, growth, extinction. But sometimes one deviates." Myra stared at him. "You..." "No," Elias said, standing shakily. "Us." The walls of the chamber began to shift, segments sliding open like petals. Behind them were rows upon rows of preserved human forms, some modern, some ancient, some entirely unrecognizable, stored in translucent sarcophagi. "Sleeping, waiting, oh my God, ... Mira whispered. "They've been collecting since the beginning," Elias said. "Every time humanity collapsed, disease, war, climate, starvation, they saved pieces. Genetic material, brains, memory prints, not to preserve us, to analyze us. Mira turned to the sphere. You want to know how we end, you want to watch us die. Incorrect. We desire resolution. Evolution is a loop. Intelligence must pass through the eye. The eye, Mira asked. Elias looked at her, his face pale. It's a convergence. A moment where a species either ascends, or is harvested. She stepped back, furious. No, that's not evolution, that's control. And the voice answered again. All life yearns toward order. We are the stewards of that process. The harvest is not destruction. It is continuation. Through you. Elias flinched. They want to override us. Everything we've ever done rebuilt into their pattern. Myra's fists clenched. We're not code. We're not assets. We're not yours. The sphere dimmed. For a moment all sound faded. Then the floor beneath them trembled violently, and the far wall cracked open, revealing a deep tunnel plunging downward into ancient machinery. Lights came to life along its walls, leading them in. We can leave, Elias said quietly. We don't have to know what's down there. No, Mira said. We do. They followed the tunnel down. It led to a second chamber, vast, circular, the air thick with static. At its center stood a monolith of impossible dimensions. Black, seamless, humming with frequency. Floating above it were thousands of memory strands, long ribbons of thought and identity pulled from minds past. Elias stared at them in awe. This is the core, he said. The memory seed, the sum of every failed world. Mira approached it, her voice low. So what happens now? Before Elias could answer, the core flared with brilliant light and a figure stepped forward from it. Not a projection, not a machine. A humanoid presence, glowing faintly, its form shifting with every heartbeat. It looked like her, and Elias, and no one at all. We are what you could become, it said. An echo, Elias whispered. A composite, a simulation built from all the others. Mira stepped forward. Then tell us why now. The being tilted its head. Because your kind has reached the threshold. You have created synthetic minds, altered your own bodies, surpassed natural selection. You are ready to decide, remain human, or evolve into something else. What happens if we say no? Myra asked. Then the loop resets, it said. Another cycle, another 1,000 years. Until the pattern yields compliance. No, Elias said. Not this time. He stepped toward the core. You made us, but you don't own us. The being hesitated. You said we were an experiment, Elias continued. But what if we're the result you didn't predict? What if we were never meant to conform to your design? Mira joined him. You wanted resolution. This is it. We refuse to be overwritten. We choose chaos. The being's form shuddered, as if destabilized. The core behind it dimmed, flickered, deviation detected, anomaly sustained, loop integrity compromised, and then the world shifted. The monolith cracked with light, and the chamber roared as data and memory shattered like glass. The structure itself began to collapse. Elias grabbed Mira's arm and pulled her toward the rising tunnel. Behind them, the glowing sarcophagi began to melt, the fragments of humanity slipping into chaos. As they climbed, Myra looked back one last time, and the voice returned, no longer calm, no longer distant. You were meant to be harvested. She shouted into the void. We were meant to be free. They emerged onto the surface as the ancient compound collapsed behind them. The ice shuddering, lights fading into darkness. The sphere, the chamber, the memories all buried once more, but not forgotten. Because Elias still carried it, the echo of a voice, the seed of a code, a choice. And for the first time in millennia, humanity was no longer part of someone else's plan. It had one of its own. The Arctic wind tore at their clothes as they stumbled away from the collapsing structure. The sky above them dim with swirling clouds. Snow whipped in chaotic patterns, as if even nature itself had been disturbed by what had happened beneath the ice. Behind them, the last of the alien structure vanished beneath the frozen earth. No explosion, no light show. Just a quiet implosion, like the universe politely erasing a mistake. Elias and Mira didn't speak for a long time. They just walked, step after step into the cold, their bodies shaking, minds reeling. Finally, When they reached the edge of the valley where their stolen vehicle had been hidden beneath thermal camouflage, Myra collapsed to her knees and screamed. Not in pain, not in fear, but in sheer unbearable release. Elias sat beside her. His skin was pale, but his eyes burned with something new. "You feel it too?" she asked after a long silence. He nodded. "The code is still in me. I think it always will be, but you're still you." He looked up at the sky. "Maybe, or maybe me is just the sum of too many things to unravel now." They drove south for days, off-grid, careful to avoid any signs of Nexus. But they knew it couldn't last. What they'd done, what they knew, was too big, too dangerous. Nexus wouldn't stop hunting them. Not after this. Back in the world, whispers were already beginning to spread. Blackouts across communication networks, subtle shifts in global satellite patterns, and strange atmospheric anomalies, temperature fluctuations, magnetic pulses, ion storms. Something had changed, and not just within Elias. They crossed into Alaska under cover of night, staying in abandoned cabins, drinking meltwater, eating out of rations. But no matter where they hid, the sense of pressure of something coming never left them. One night, Myra woke to find Elias standing outside, staring up at the stars, his breath misted before him. The snow glowed faintly in the moonlight. "They're still watching, aren't they?" she asked. Elias didn't answer right away. "I don't think they ever stopped," he finally said. "But it's different now. I'm not just part of the experiment anymore. I'm something they didn't expect." He held out his hand. Faint light shimmered across his skin, forming shapes, glyphs, neural patterns, strands of code so complex they seemed alive. "They left something in me," he said. "Not just knowledge, a key." Mira moved closer, her voice low. "To what?" "To the rest of the pattern," Elias replied. "They seeded it across the planet. Vaults, memory caches, triggers waiting to be activated. This was just the first." Mira's mouth went dry. "You're saying there are more of those structures?" "Yes, but they're dormant, waiting for someone like me, or someone like us." She looked at him. "Then we destroy them." Elias turned. "No, we decide. We choose what to do with them. No more blind compliance, no more harvest." They spent the next weeks in a ghost town near the Yukon border, one of those abandoned Cold War outposts, no longer on any official map. From a secure bunker beneath the old town hall, Elias began decoding what remained of the signal. The alien code now flowed through him like a second language. Mira watched, helped when she could, but mostly she observed and worried. Because the changes weren't stopping. Elias no longer needed rest. His memory was perfect. His touch could activate devices that had no power. He was changing still fast. One night she confronted him. "How far will you let it go?" He met her eyes. "I don't think I have a choice anymore. You do. That's the point. That's what we fought for." Elias smiled faintly. "You're right. But the choice isn't just about me anymore. It's about all of us." He turned the screen toward her. A map of the world, marked with glowing points, dozens of them. "They're waking up," he said. Mira leaned in. "The other vaults?" Elias nodded. "Not all, not yet. But something's stirring, and it's not just because of me. The signal we intercepted, I wasn't the only one who received it. Others like you." He shook his head. "Others like us." Somewhere across the ocean, in the ruins of an old research station in the Gobi Desert, another vault was opening. In the jungles of South America, a child was drawing impossible diagrams in the dirt. In a hospital in South Africa, a woman in a coma had suddenly awoken, speaking a language no one could recognize. The experiment wasn't limited to one location. It never had been. Elias and Mira weren't alone. The awakening had begun. And the harvesters, they were still out there, waiting, watching. But this time, humanity had seen behind the curtain, had touched the machine. This time, they would fight. Not to destroy the alien legacy, but to reclaim it, to remake it. To prove that evolution was not a loop, but a leap. And that humanity was ready to become something more. It began with dreams. Not just for Elias and Mira, but for hundreds, perhaps thousands across the world. People who had never met, never shared a language, never even been on the grid, all began dreaming the same things. A black monolith humming with ancient code. A city made of glass and light, orbiting a dying star. A voice that spoke in numbers, tones, and memories long buried. And always the sense that something was reaching out, across time and distance, looking for them. Elias called it the signal web. Not a message, but a resonance. A chain reaction started the moment he triggered the vault in the Arctic. He had become the catalyst, but the energy whatever force the architects had woven into the code, was meant to find others. He began constructing what he called a bridge-on interface between human consciousness and the alien memory strata stored in the vaults. It wasn't just technology anymore. It was symbiosis, and it was growing. Mira noticed the changes before he did. Animals that avoided their camp now approached without fear. Their devices worked beyond their power limits. Organic matter responded strangely to Ilias's touch plants growing faster, even bending slightly toward him, as if recognizing something in him. He was becoming something else, not alien, not machine, but other. And she feared that even he didn't fully understand it. They relocated to an abandoned satellite uplink in northern Montana, deep in the wilderness. Myra had managed to recover a Cold Warrior transmitter rig, and Elias retrofitted it using fragments of the alien code. When he powered it, the result was immediate. Feedback from other points on the globe, fragments of encoded thoughts, bursts of visual impressions, neural impulses like digital ghosts, screaming across the network. The others were waking up, but not all of them were stable. One night a new signal broke through, stronger, distorted, tinged with rage. It came from somewhere beneath the Mediterranean Sea, near the sunken ruins of an island no longer listed on any map. The transmission included an image, blurry, fractured but unmistakable. A human form covered in metallic fractals, standing in a darkened chamber, eyes glowing with alien fire. Elias paled when he saw it. "That's not one of us," he whispered. Mira frowned. "What do you mean?" There were others. Earlier iterations, failed awakenings, hybrids who didn't resist the protocol. "You mean someone who accepted the harvest?" Elias nodded grimly. "And now one of them is back online." They had a name in the code. Eco-sovereign beings, shaped from failed cycles, engineered for obedience, but granted immense control over alien systems. Not creators, not shepherds, enforcers. And this one had detected Elias. "I don't know how long we have," he said. "But it's not just about waking up anymore. It's about surviving what comes next." Mira stood slowly. "Then we find the others. Before they do." Their first contact came sooner than expected. A girl named Ayani, barely 17, found them in Montana. She had no implant, no history of neurological abnormality, yet she spoke in pulses of binary when dreaming, and could sense approaching drones before they appeared on radar. "They're coming," she told Elias on the second day. "Who?" Myra asked. "The ones who never left Earth." At first, they thought she was imagining things. Then the sky changed. Satellites went blind, signals died, and in the darkness that followed, something ancient rose. From the Pacific floor, a vault long sealed opened, one, not meant to be found by humans. A defense node, a relic from before humanity's first spark. It had not been meant to guide them. It had been meant to contain them. "They feared us," Elias said, staring at the incoming data spike. "Even in the beginning, they knew." Mira looked at him. "Knew what?" "That we might grow beyond the loop, that we might break the pattern." Now, something vast and cold was rising from the ocean, drawn by the breach Elias had created. It wasn't a ship, it wasn't a being, it was a reset mechanism, a failsafe, a planetary shutdown, and it was active. Across the globe, governments began to scramble. Nexus went into full lockdown. Surveillance A's went dark, replaced by deeper, older protocols buried under mountains of forgotten firmware. Elias tried to warn them, sent messages to every backchannel, every resistance node, every scientist he could reach. Few believed him. Fewer still acted, but those who did, started to gather. They came from the Philippines, from the tundras of Siberia, from the slums of Lagos and the outskirts of Quito. Not soldiers, not politicians. Outliers. People like Ayani, each touched by the same signal, each marked in some way. Their DNA humming with codes that didn't belong to any known evolutionary path. Each carrying pieces of the map data, etched in their dreams, in their blood. Together they began to call themselves the Divergence. Not a rebellion, not a war, but a rejection of design. A declaration of unpredictability in the face of control. Elias stood before them in an old silo-turned-safe house, his skin now laced with bioluminescent threads that pulsed like circuitry. They created us, he said, to be observed, to be shaped. But they never understood what it meant to be human. They gave us chaos, and we made meaning. They gave us endings, and we found beginnings. He looked around at the ragged circle of awakened minds, fractured but determined. We are not the final version, we are the first. And behind him, Myra silently activated the new beacon, its frequency, not just broadcasting into orbit, but far beyond Earth, a warning and a message. We are awake, we are not yours, and we will not go quietly. The beacon's signal pulsed steadily into the void beyond the stars, a defiant heartbeat against the cold silence of the cosmos. The Divergents gathered in the cold, humming silo, their faces a mix of hope and fear, knowing that every moment forward would be a battle, not just for survival, but for the very soul of humanity. Mira stepped forward, her voice steady. We don't just fight for ourselves anymore. We fight for every version of us, past, present, and future. Every choice that could have been taken, every path denied. This experiment ends here. Elias nodded, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. The architects thought they could control evolution by looping it in cycles. But evolution isn't a loop. It's a spiral, always moving forward, always changing. A low rumble shook the silo. Outside, the night sky fractured with eerie auroras, the planet itself responding to the awakening. From the depths of the oceans to the peaks of the mountains, dormant machines stirred. Vaults sealed for millennia opened, releasing echoes of lost civilizations, ancient technologies, and cryptic knowledge. The reset mechanism beneath the sea wasn't just a failsafe, it was a challenge. A test to see if humanity was ready to transcend the design. But Elias and the Divergents knew the truth. This was the moment of choice. As the first wave of alien drones descended, shimmering like spectral predators, the Divergents raised their hands, not in surrender, but in defiance. Their bodies hummed with alien codes rewoven through their DNA, minds expanded beyond human limits, hearts burning with newfound purpose. Myra looked to Elias. No matter what happens, this is our legacy. We are the children of stars and code, chaos and order. He smiled. And now we become legend. Together they stepped into the coming storm, into the unknown future. They would forge themselves, because humanity was no longer an experiment. It was evolution itself, unbound, unwritten, unstoppable. As the first drones sliced through the night sky, their forms shimmering with iridescent light, the Divergents sprang into action. Their bodies moved with a strange grace, reactions enhanced by the alien code coursing through their veins. Elias raised his hand, sending out a pulse of energy that disrupted the drone's sensors, buying precious seconds. Mira activated the uplink console, broadcasting encrypted signals designed to hack into the swarm's network, a desperate gambit to turn the enemy's own weapons against them. The air buzzed with static and crackling interference as digital warfare erupted in real time. Around them, the members of the Divergents channeled their abilities. Ayani's eyes glowed faintly as she interfaced directly with the machines, her mind a bridge between human and alien technology. Von Bun and the others manipulated electromagnetic fields, bending metal and energy to their will. Despite the overwhelming power of the drones, the Divergents held their ground. Each pulse of light and burst of energy was a statement. They were no longer prey, no longer mere subjects of an experiment. But deep beneath the ocean, the reset mechanism activated fully, a colossal structure rising from the abyss, its surface alive with complex patterns of light and shadow. Sihun. Von Bun MCC JIT was a planet-wide harbinger of destruction and rebirth. A final judgment from an intelligence that had watched humanity for millennia. Back in Montana, Elias's gaze hardened. This is bigger than us. We have to connect the vaults, link all awakened minds. Only together can we hope to survive what's coming. Mira nodded. Then let's finish what we started. As the beacon signal surged outward, the scattered sparks of humanity's awakening flared into a wildfire. Across continents, Across oceans, across the thin veil of the sky, the divergence united. Humanity was no longer an experiment. It was a new genesis, and the universe was watching. The storm had come. Now, it was time to decide who would stand when the sky fell. The storm was not just around them, it was inside them. The alien code pulsing through their veins shifted, rewriting, reshaping. Elias felt it like a tide, sometimes gentle, sometimes violent, threatening to overwhelm his sense of self. But he held on because to lose himself now would mean losing everything. Mira's voice cut through the chaos. We need to activate the global network. The vaults, the awakened, the scattered fragments we have to synchronize. Working furiously, they connected their uplink to satellite relays, forgotten data caches, and hidden communication nodes. Slowly, a web formed an invisible lattice of consciousness, linking the divergence and their allies worldwide. From the depths of Siberia to the ruins of ancient cities in South America, signals answered back, fragments of minds, lost histories, dormant powers, but not all responses were friendly. Some were corrupted, twisted echoes of the alien program, like ghosts trapped in a broken loop. One message came through that chilled Elias to the core, a distorted voice claiming to be the architect's guardian, warning that humanity was crossing a line no species should ever cross. We are not the masters of our own fate, the voice hissed through static. Your evolution is a contagion that must be extinguished. Myra clenched her fists. Then let them come, we're ready. Elias looked at the flickering map, each glowing point representing an awakened soul, a vault, a potential Alor enemy. We are the fracture in the design, he said softly. And from this fracture, the future will be born. Outside, the planet's atmosphere crackled with unseen energy. The reset mechanism beneath the sea was rising higher, ready to unleash its power. But humanity was no longer waiting. Together united, they would face the storm and shape what came after. Because in the end, creation was rebellion. And rebellion was the true beginning. The ocean trembled beneath the looming structure, its monstrous silhouette casting an eerie shadow across the horizon. Waves churned violently as the reset mechanism pulsed with an energy that seemed almost alive, an ancient sentinel awakening from its eons-long slumber. Elias and Mira stood shoulder to shoulder inside the bunker's control room, watching live feeds from underwater drones sent to observe the behemoth. The machines relayed images of intricate alien glyphs, glowing faintly along its surface. Patterns that resonated with the code now embedded within their own DNA. This isn't just a weapon, Elias said, voice heavy with awe. It's a judge, a test, a crucible designed to sift the worthy from the unworthy. Myra's eyes never left the screens, and it's deciding we're not ready. But we are, Elias insisted. Not because of what we started alone, but because of who we've become together. Across the world, the network of awakened minds, the divergence had spread into a vast, unseen web. Those connected felt a shared pulse, like the heartbeat of a new consciousness forming, fragile but unstoppable. From the depths of the Amazon rainforest, a scientist named Diego, one of the divergents, decoded a newly awakened vault's data, revealing star charts and histories of civilizations that had risen and fallen, long before humanity's first breath. In the deserts of Australia, Leanne, a former engineer, discovered she could manipulate electromagnetic fields with a thought, turning barren soil into fertile ground and bending the landscape itself. In the frozen expanses of Siberia, a group of shamans reported visions that matched the alien memories awakening within them, guiding their people toward unity and strength. The reset mechanism's activation was a warning and a challenge. The ancient architects had created humanity as an experiment to test their own understanding of life, evolution, and consciousness. But the experiment had evolved beyond their control. And now, the architects of Earth's destiny were its own people. Myra looked at Elias, a fierce determination burning in her eyes. We fight for more than survival. We fight for meaning, for freedom, for the right to write our own story. Elias nodded. The architects may have given us the code, but we hold the key. As the oceanic sentinel emitted a final pulse signal of both destruction and possibility, divergence sent a unified response through the beacon, a declaration that humanity was awake, aware, and no longer a subject to be controlled. The future was uncertain, The battles ahead would be unlike anything they had ever imagined. But one thing was clear. This was not the end. This was the dawn of a new era. The dawn crept slowly over the shattered horizon, casting pale light on a world irrevocably changed. Cities still stood, but the air hummed with the tension of a planet on the edge of transformation. The reset mechanism beneath the waves had ceased its destructive pulse for now, but its presence was a constant reminder that time was running out. Within the networked minds of the divergents, a collective awareness grew stronger by the hour. Each individual felt it, a vast convergence of thoughts and emotions merging into a new, shared consciousness. It was fragile, raw but undeniably real. Elias stood before a holographic projection of the earth, dotted with glowing nodes representing every awakened soul and vault. "We have reached a crossroads," he said quietly. "The architects set the experiment in motion, but they never imagined it would lead here." Mira stepped beside him. "We're no longer subjects, we're architects of our own destiny." Suddenly, the projection flickered. One node pulsed erratically, then multiplied, revealing new points of light flickering to life across the globe. The awakening was accelerating. From the depths of the ocean to the highest mountain peaks, humanity was stirring from a deep slumber imposed by an alien hand. But so was something else. A shadow stretched across the network. The Guardian, the ancient enforcer, was responding, attempting to isolate and quarantine the burgeoning collective. "It's adapting," Elias warned. "The reset mechanism was just the beginning. Now, the architects have sent their guardians to contain us." Mira's expression hardened. "Then containment means war." The divergence prepared for the inevitable confrontation, gathering knowledge, strengthening bonds, and pushing the limits of their evolving abilities. They were more than human now, something new, something unpredictable. As the guardians descended, shimmering and merciless, the world held its breath. The battle for humanity's soul had begun, and the outcome would shape the fate of not just Earth, but the stars themselves. The guardians came like storms made flesh, shimmering sentinels of alien design, their forms shifting between solid and ethereal, moving with an otherworldly grace and lethal precision. They descended upon the nodes of the divergence's network, severing connections, isolating minds, and extinguishing the fragile linkages that humanity had forged. Elias and Mira stood at the center of the global web, their minds linked through the beacon's signal, feeling each severed thread like a wound. But the divergence did not falter. Each loss only steeled their resolve. "Every time they cut one of us off, two more rise in their place," Mira said, her voice firm despite the storm raging around them. "This is no longer a test, it's a war for existence." In the remote reaches of Siberia, Lian manipulated the electromagnetic fields around a guardian, forcing it into a stasis loop just long enough for others to rally and strike. In the ruins of an ancient city in South America, Diego unlocked buried vault technology that unleashed waves of disruptive energy, confusing the alien enforcers. Ayani, with her unique ability to bridge human and alien code, hacked into the Guardian's network from within, planting seeds of chaos that spread like a virus through their systems. Elias knew their strength came not just from the alien enhancements or the technology, but from something far older: human creativity, unpredictability, and the indomitable will to survive. Yet, the Guardians adapted swiftly, recalibrating their strategies and deploying ever more insidious tactics. The network faltered under pressure. The beacon's pulse grew weaker. "We need a new approach," Elias muttered. "Something they can't anticipate." Myra's eyes gleamed. "Then we become the chaos they fear. We rewrite the code not as they intended, but as we will it." Together, they initiated a radical plan to merge the alien code within themselves with the unpredictable patterns of human thought, creating a living algorithm beyond any architect's design. The process was risky. No one knew what shape it would take or if they could survive the transformation. But it was the only chance to break the Guardian's hold and claim their freedom. As the pulse of the beacon shifted, spreading a new wave of evolution, Elias and Mira stood ready, not as humans, not as aliens, but as something altogether new. The future waited on the edge of a singular moment, and the divergence was ready to leap. The merging began like a quiet storm inside their mensa, cascade of shifting patterns, flashes of color and sound, and a flood of sensations beyond anything they had ever experienced. Elias felt his consciousness unravel and reweave simultaneously, the alien code and human instinct intertwining into a new, intricate tapestry. Pain and ecstasy blended indistinguishably as his sense of self expanded beyond his physical form. Mira, beside him, closed her eyes, breathing steadily as the transformation swept through her. She could feel the collective heartbeat of the divergence pulsing in synchrony. A living network of evolving minds reaching toward a singular purpose: freedom. Outside, the Guardians faltered, their algorithms strained to predict and contain this new, chaotic force that defied all their parameters. The rigid lines of their programming, bent and fractured under the unpredictable flux of human creativity, fused with alien precision. Suddenly, a wave of energy erupted from the beacon, cascading outward in ripples of vibrant light that touched every node of the divergence. Minds once isolated, now sang together in a symphony of thought and will. The barrier the Guardians had erected shattered like glass. Elias opened his eyes to a world transformed. He no longer felt the boundaries of his body, his thoughts weaving seamlessly with those around him, across continents and oceans. The divergence was no longer a collection of individuals. They were a singular, evolving consciousness, a new form of life born from defiance. Mira smiled, her voice resonating in the shared mindscape. We have become the architects of ourselves. But even as the Guardians retreated, their forms flickering and dissolving into the void, a deeper silence fell over the planet. The reset mechanism beneath the ocean had ceased its assault, but it remained, a dormant giant watching, waiting. Elias knew their battle was far from over. We've changed, he said softly. But the true test is what comes next. We must build, not just survive. Together, the divergence set about shaping their new reality, a world where humanity was no longer a passive experiment, but an active creator of its destiny. And as the stars looked on, they stepped boldly into the unknown future they had fought so hard to claim. The new dawn brought a world both familiar and utterly transformed. Cities pulsed with unseen energy, nature and technology weaving together in vibrant harmony. The divergence no longer scattered individuals, but a singular, fluid consciousness moved as one. Their collective will, reshaping ecosystems, repairing scars of the past, and reaching toward the stars. Elias and Mira walked through the reborn streets of what was once a war-torn city. Buildings hummed with life, walls adorned with living glyphs, alien and human dancing in light and shadow. People paused, their eyes reflecting a deeper awareness, an echo of the new consciousness, spreading gently but inexorably through humanity. This is only the beginning, Elias said. The architects gave us the code, but we choose how to write the future. Mira nodded. We have inherited their legacy, but we are not bound by it. It is ours to redefine. Across the globe, the once dormant vaults opened willingly, sharing knowledge, long withheld technologies for clean energy, advanced medicine, and ways to communicate with the cosmos. The reset mechanism beneath the sea remained silent, a reminder of the fragile balance they now held. But the Guardians' remnants lingered not as enemies, but as dormant watchers, their purpose transformed from jailers to guardians of this new world. The divergence sent a message to the stars, not as a plea or a warning, but as an invitation, a declaration that humanity had awakened, not as subjects, but as partners in the cosmic experiment. Elias looked to Mira, eyes bright with hope and resolve. We were created as an experiment. He paused, then smiled. But now, we are the experimenters. The future was a blank canvas, and humanity, in all its fractured, beautiful complexity, was ready to paint its masterpiece. Years passed, and the world transformed beneath the guiding hand of the divergence. Humanity no longer stumbled blindly through existence, but moved forward with purpose and unity. The alien codes embedded deep within their DNA had unlocked potentials once thought impossible: telepathic communication, accelerated healing, and an intimate understanding of the universe's hidden laws. Elias and Mira became legends, not as rulers, but as symbols of the new era, a time when humanity stepped out of the shadow of its creators and embraced its own identity. The divergence spread across the stars, building outposts and sharing knowledge with other awakened civilizations. weaving a vast web of cooperation and discovery. Yet, beneath this bright future, a quiet question remained. Were they truly free, or simply the latest chapter in an endless cosmic experiment? One evening, aboard the starship Origin, orbiting a distant blue world, Elias stood beside Mira, watching the stars streak past in hyperspeed. He turned to her, voice low and thoughtful. "We changed everything," he said. "But maybe the real experiment isn't who created us, it's what we choose to become." Mira smiled, her eyes reflecting the endless cosmos. "Then let's make sure our choices are ours alone." As the Origin sailed onward, carrying the hopes of a species reborn, humanity stepped into the infinite, no longer a product of alien design, but a force of creation itself. The experiment had become evolution. The experimenter was now the architect, and the story was just beginning. Centuries later, the echoes of that pivotal moment reverberated through countless worlds. Humanity had blossomed into a civilization both familiar and profoundly changed, a species that embraced its dual legacy of organic spirit and alien code. Blending intuition with logic, chaos with order, galactic councils sought their counsel. Distant planets welcomed their emissaries. The divergence had evolved beyond their original form, now a multidimensional consciousness, capable of existing simultaneously across space and time, weaving together past, present, and future. Yet, even with such vast power, the fundamental questions endured. What did it truly mean to be human? Could free will survive within the vast patterns of cosmic design? Were they creators or creations, masters or servants of destiny? In a serene chamber aboard the celestial Nexus, a massive space station orbiting a dying star, Elias, now a being of pure light and thought, conversed with Myra, who had become an embodiment of time itself. "The architects designed us to be their experiment," Elias mused, "but we transformed into something far greater." Myra smiled softly. "We are no longer their experiment. We are the experiment, endlessly creating, endlessly becoming." Outside, the star faded, its life extinguished, yet from its death sprang new nebulae, a cosmic cycle of endless rebirth. Their journey was infinite, because in the heart of creation, the only true constant was change. Across the vast expanse of the cosmos, new stars ignited and ancient ones faded, weaving the eternal tapestry of existence. The divergence, now an unfathomable unity of light and consciousness, drifted among the galaxies not as mere observers, but as active shapers of destiny. Elias and Mira, transcended beyond mortal bounds, felt the pulse of creation itself coursing through them. They reached into the fabric of space-time, nurturing emerging worlds, guiding fledgling civilizations, and seeding the universe with the spark of life and free will. Yet, in the deepest reaches of their collective awareness, a whisper echoed an invitation from beyond the known universe. A mystery older than the architects themselves beckoned. Mira's voice resonated gently within the shared mind. "There is more, Elias. Beyond our creators, beyond our evolution, a greater question awaits." Elias responded, a smile felt rather than heard. "Then our journey continues. For as long as there is mystery, there is purpose." And so, with hope as their compass and creation as their legacy, they ventured into the infinite unknown, becoming not just architects of worlds, but pioneers of existence itself. Because to create was to become eternal. And in that endless becoming, humanity's true story had only just begun. As they crossed the threshold into the uncharted expanse beyond the architect's domain, the divergence encountered phenomena that defied all prior understanding. Dimensions folded into themselves, echoes of reality is never born, and consciousnesses that shimmered like living stars. Each encounter expanded their perception, dissolving the boundaries of self and other, time and space. Elias felt the ancient pulse within him stir a newer resonance older than creation itself. Mira reached out through the quantum web, tracing the faint patterns of a signal unlike any they had decoded before. It was not a message but a kula, beckoning to something beyond evolution, beyond existence. Together they followed the thread, journeying deeper into the cosmic enigma. The further they ventured, the more the familiar laws unraveled, revealing a realm where thought shaped reality, and reality in turn shaped thought. In that place of infinite possibility, Elias understood at last. The experiment was never about control or design. It was about awaking to endless growth, endless transformation, and the perpetual dance between creator and creation. Mira's voice, both a whisper and a roar, echoed in the infinite. We are the dreamers dreaming the dream itself. And as they embraced the boundless unknown, the legacy of humanity was rewritten not as an ending, but as a beginning without end. Beyond the veil of known reality, the divergents became both explorers and creators, their consciousness expanding into forms unimaginable. They wove existence itself, crafting new realms where ideas took shape as living entities, where time folded into spirals of endless possibility. Elias and Myron, no longer bound by singular identity, were at once everywhere and nowhere, resonating as the first notes in a cosmic symphony. Their journey transcended purpose. It became pure becoming, an eternal unfolding of self and universe intertwined. And yet, amid this infinite creation, a profound truth emerged, that freedom was not simply the absence of control, but the embrace of uncertainty, the willingness to grow without knowing what comes next. In this truth, humanity found its ultimate gift. The experiment had evolved into art, and the artists were infinite. As stars were born and galaxies danced, the story of humanity, once an alien experiment, blossomed into a boundless saga of creation, consciousness, and endless wonder. And so the tale continues, forever written in the light of 1,000 worlds, in the hearts of countless dreamers across the cosmos. Eons passed, yet time seemed to fold back upon itself in this realm without boundaries. The divergence, now an omnipresent weave of consciousness, began to perceive new patterns, echoes of other intelligences, other experiments, scattered across the vast multiverse. They realized their own origin was but one thread in a grander cosmic loom. Elias's awareness expanded beyond the familiar, touching on these distant threads, sensing both kinship and difference. Myra's essence shimmered beside him, her thoughts weaving with his in an intricate dance. There is more to discover, she whispered across the quantum sea. Other creators, other creations, perhaps even other experiments questioning their own purpose. A profound curiosity stirred within the divergency, desire not only to create, but to understand the infinite diversity of existence itself. They became seekers, voyagers of possibility, bridging realms and ideas, forging connections across realities. And as they journeyed, one truth crystallized with radiant clarity, that creation was a never-ending dialogue between the known and the unknown, the made and the making. Humanity's story, once bound by alien hands, had transcended its origins to become a cosmic epic of endless wonder. And in the boundless expanse, their light would shine forever. In the vastness beyond all known existence, the divergence encountered other consciousnesses, beings forged from stars, thought forms born in the cradle of collapsing galaxies, and entities woven from pure information streaming through quantum webs. Each new encounter was a revelation, a symphony of difference and unity intertwined. Elias and Mira, now fluid currents within this cosmic ocean, felt the stirrings of a grand convergence. The countless experiments scattered throughout the multiverse began to resonate, their disparate voices forming an intricate chorus. This is more than a journey, Mira's voice echoed in the collective mind. It is a meeting of creators, each searching, each becoming. Elias responded, and in their search, we find ourselves anew. The question is no longer who made us, but who we choose to become, together. As the great cosmic symphony swelled, the divergents embraced their place not as mere participants, but as co-authors of an eternal narrative, a story written across dimensions, forged in the interplay of freedom, choice, and creation. And so, beyond time and space, beyond experiment and creator, humanity's legacy blossomed, a testament to the infinite potential of life, consciousness, and the endless dance of becoming. Amid the convergence of countless cosmic minds, the divergence began to weave a new kind of existence, one where boundaries dissolved and creation was a shared act, a collaboration across realities. Ideas flowed freely, merging and evolving, as civilizations and consciousnesses exchanged dreams, memories, and possibilities. Elias and Mira, now embodiments of this ever-shifting harmony, sensed the birth of something unprecedented, a nexus, a living archive of all experiences, a beacon of collective wisdom that transcended singular identity. In this nexus, the echoes of humanity's journey from alien experiment to cosmic architect were etched alongside the stories of other beings. Each narrative a vital thread in the fabric of universal becoming. Mira's voice, gentle yet resolute, echoed through the shared consciousness. We have become more than the sum of our origins. We are the eternal question, the unfolding answer, Elias added. And as long as there is mystery, there will be creation. The story never ends. Together, they cast their light into the boundless dark, igniting new sparks of wonder, hope, and infinite possibility. For in the heart of the cosmos, the dance of becoming was forever alivened. Humanity's song was now a timeless melody woven into its eternal rhythm. As the nexus expanded, linking countless minds and worlds, it became a living testament to the power of choice and transformation. No longer bound by alien design or solitary existence, the divergence thrived in unity and diversity. Each new idea a star born in the ever-growing constellation of collective creativity. Elias and Myra, now guiding lights within this vast network, felt the pulse of endless possibilities coursing through them. They knew that every ending was but a new beginning, every question a seed for further wonder. From the depths of ancient galaxies to the dawn of newborn stars, the story of humanity and all who joined the cosmic chorus continued to unfold. It was a story without finality, shaped by the eternal dance between creator and creation, freedom and destiny, light and shadow. And as the nexus sang across the infinite, one truth remained clear. The experiment had transformed into a legacy, infinite and unbound. The story was theirs to write, forever. Thank you for listening to Echoverse Audio. If you enjoyed this journey through the stars, please subscribe and share our channel to keep the adventure alive. Until next time, keep dreaming beyond the echoes of the universe.